Hello everyone, welcome back. We're gonna start on chapter 7 for reincarnation and law of karma. We are going to continue reading on the chapter 7, between and beyond incarnations. It's about 8-9 pages long, so we're gonna go right on ahead. So on the first questions usually asked by students of this subject, reincarnation is where the soul dwells between incarnations. Does it incarnate immediately after death? And what is the final abad or state? This question or questions have been asked from the beginning and probably will be asked so long as a human body dwells upon subject. And many are answers that have been given to questionnaires of teachers of authorities upon subject. Let us consider some of the leading more authoritative answers. In the first place, let us consider the phase of the question which asks, does the soul incarnate immediately after death? Some of the early reincarnalists believe that taught that the soul reincarnated shortly after death, and the short periods between incarnations being used by the soul in adjusting itself, striking a balance of character, and preparing for a new birth. Others held that there were a period of waiting and rest between incarnations in which the soul mentally digested the experiences of the last life just completed, and then consider it, meditate over the mistakes it had made, and determine that rectify the mistakes in the next life. It is being held that the soul was relieved of the necessities of material existence. It could be more clearly of the moral nature of its acts, and would be able to realize the spiritual side of itself more distinctly. In addition to having benefit the spiritual perspective occasioned by the distance from the active scenes of life, and thus being able to be better to gauge respective worthwhilness of the things of the material life.
At the present time, the most advanced students of the subject holds that the average periods of the rest between incarnations is about 1500 years. The less advanced souls hastening back to the earth in a very short time, the more advanced preferring a long period of rest, meditations, and preparations for a new life. It is held that the soul of a gross materials animal-like persons will incarnated very shortly after death. The period of rest and meditations being very short, for the reasons that there is a very little about which, such as a soul could meditate, as long as all of its attractions and desires are connected with materials life. Many souls are so earthbound that they rush back at once into materials embodiment. If the conditions of the rebirth are favorable, and they are generally favorable, for there seems to always an abundant supplies of new bodies suitable for such souls in the families of peoples of the same characters and natures, which offers congenial opportunities for such as souls to reincarnate. Other souls which has progressed a little further along the path of attainment have cultivated the higher parts of themselves somewhat, and enjoy to a greater extent of the periods of meditations and spiritual lives afforded them. And so, as the scales advances, as the attractions of the materials life grows less, the period of purely spiritual existence between incarnations grows longer, and it is said that the souls of the persons who are highly developed spirituality sometimes dwell in the states of rest for 10,000 years or more, unless they voluntarily return sooner in order to take part in the work of uplifting the world. It must be remembered in these connections that the best teachings is to the effect that the advanced souls are rapidly unfolding into the states in which they are unable to deserves consciousness in further in futures birth instead of losing its as its is a usual case, and thus they take a conscious part of the selections of the conditions for rebirth, which is wisely denied persons of a more material natures and less spiritual development. The next phase of the questions, where does the soul dwell between incarnation, is one still more difficult of answer, owing to their various shades of opinions on this subject. Still, there is a fundamental agreement between the different schools, and as we shall try to give you the instance or the cream of the thoughts on the subject. In the first place, all occultists set aside any idea of there being a place in which the souls dwell, the existence of states or plans of existence being deemed is sufficient for the purpose. It is held that there are many plans of existence in any and every portions of space, which plans penetrates each other's, so that entities dwelling on one's plans usually are not conscious of the presence of those on another plan. Thus, an inhabitant of a high plane of being in which the vibrations of substance are being higher than that which is occupying would be able to pass through our materials world without a slightest knowledge of its existence, just as the X-ray passes through the most solid objects, or as light passes through the air. It is held that there are many plans of existence much higher than the ones we occupy, and upon which the disembodied souls dwell. There are many details regarding these plans taught by the different schools of the occultisms or spiritualisms, but we have neither the time nor space to consider them at length, and must content ourselves and with mentioning but if your leaders or typically beliefs or teachers on the subject. The Theosophists teach that when the soul leaves the body, there occurs a process of psychic photography in which the past life, in all of these details, is indelibly imprinted on the inner substance of the soul, thus preserving a seconds independent of the brain, the latter being left behind the physical body. Then the astral body, or an etheric double, detaches itself from the body, from which the vital forces, or prana java, also departed at the same time. The astral bodies enfolding as also the four others principles, and together the five surviving principles pass on to the plane of the Kama Loka, or the astral plane of desire. Kama Loka is that part of the astral planet nearest of the material plane, and is very closely connected with the letter. If the soul is filled with hot and earnest desire for the earth life, it may proceed no further, but may hasten back to the materials embodiment, as we said in a moment ago. But if the soul has higher aspirations and has developed a higher part of itself, it presses on further. In which case of the astral bodies and the animal souls, which is the seat of the passions of grosser desires, distinguish, and thus releases the triad or threefold highest natures of the souls, namely the higher human souls, the spiritual souls, and the spirits, or as some terms, then the intellect, the spiritual mind, and the spirits. The triad then passes on to what is known as the plane of division, where rests devastated of the lower parts, the parts of its nature, and it states that the bliss and in the conditions in which it may make great progresses by reasons of meditations, reflections, and etc.
Kama Loka is compared to the purgatory of the Catholics, which resembles in more ways than one. According to the Theosophists, Devachan is often called the heaven world of the Theosophists. The word meaning of the state of the plane of the gods, Theosophy, teaches the soul triad dwells in the Devachan for a period of proportionate to the merit of the being and whirlwinds of the proper time, and the being drawn into the down again of the reborn in the world of mortals. The law of karma, which rules the earth, of the law of man, and which regulates the details of the rebirth, is said to operate on the devachanic plane as well as the divine, deciding the time of the abade on the plane, and the time when the soul is proceed to the rebirth. The state of the existence Davachan is described as a link in the theosophical writings. But is too complex for the full consideration here. Briefly stated in there said, is taught the life of the Devachan in the life of nature, the dream of the best of which the us that is a condition in which the highest that is it within us is given chance for expression and growth and development. The state of soul is Devachan. It is said to be one of the bliss of degree depending upon the degree of spiritual development of the soul. As the bliss of the entirely spiritual nature, it may be compared to a state of people listening and sometimes beautiful music of greater musical development on the person. The greater will be his degree of enjoyment. It's also taught to suggest that the soul leaves Devachan to be reincarnated. It is given a glimpse of the past lives and present character, of realize the karmic relations between cause and effect, and the end of its new life, and may be improved upon. That it sinks into the state of unconscious and passes on to the rebirth into the spiritual plane. The Western school of yogi philosophy gives the idea of the state between incarnations of somewhat electric in its origins, agreeing with this theosophical teaching in some respects and differing from others. To take away the hasty glance of it, the first place it does not use the terms karma, loka, and devachan respectively, but it instead threats the whole series of the planes as the great astral plane, astral projection, containing many planes of divisions of subdivisions, made the subplanes and divisions and the sub the same. The teaching is that the soul passes out to the body, leaving behind a physical form together in the prana and vital energy, and taking it to the astral body, the instructive mind, and higher principles. The last vision of the past life, in which events of life impress upon the soul, just as it leaves the body, so it's beheld in the facts of the soul, sees the past life as a whole. And it's all in minute test, the details at the moment of death. It is urged that the dying person should be left undisturbed in his last moments for any reason. For this reason, that the soul may become calm and peaceful when staring on the journey. On one of the astral planes, the soul gradually discards the astral body, and its instructive mind retains its higher vehicles or sheaths. But it's taught that discarding of the lower sheaths occurs when the soul has passed into the soul slumber of soul plane of the astral plane, astral world, from the which awakens to find itself clothed only in higher mental spiritual garments of being and free from the grosser coverings and burdens. The teaching says when the soul has cast off the confining sheaths and reached the state of his which is prepared, it passes on to the plane of astral world for which it is fitted to the drawn by the law of attraction.
The planes of the astral worlds interpenetrates the soul's dwellings, and the planes are not conscious of those dwellings on another, nor can they pass from one plane to another. Well, with this exceptions, that those dwellings on the higher planes are able to see if they so desire the planes below them in the orders of the developments, and are also able to visit these lower planes if they so desire. But those on the lower planes are not able to either see or visit the planes above them. Not that there is a watchman at the gate. They prevent them, but there are the same reasons that a fish is not able to pass through the water to the plane of air above the water. The same teachings tell us that the souls on the higher planes often visit friends and relatives on the lower, so that there is always the opportunities for loves, ones, relatives, and friends meeting in this way, and also meeting souls on the higher planes pass through the lower planes in order to instruct it. Otherwise, those dwellings and others letters, the results that in some cases there may be a progression from a lower to a higher planes of the astral world by promotions earned by this. Instructions regarding rebirth from the astral world. The teaching says, but sooner or later, the souls feel free to desire to gain new experiences and to manifest in earth like some of the advancements which has come to them since death, and for these reasons, and from the attractions of desire which have been smoldering there, not live or out or cast off, or possibility influenced by the fact that some loved souls on the lower plane is ready to incarnate and wishing to be incarnated at the same time in order to be with it, which is also a desire. The souls fall into the current sweeping towards rebirth and the selections of the proper parents and advantageous circumstances and surroundings, and the consequences against fall into a soul's slumbers gradually, and so playing, and so when their times comes to die, to the plane upon which they have been existing, are born into a new physical life and body. A soul does not fully awaken from its sleepings immediately at birth, but existing in a dream-like state during the days of infancy. It gets gradual awakening, being evidenced by the growing intelligence of the babe, the brain of the child, keeping pace with the demands made upon it. In some cases, the awakening of the premature, and we see cases of prodigies, child's genius, etc. But such cases are more or less abnormal and unhealthy. Occasionally, the dreaming souls in the child's half wakes and startles us by some profound observations or mature remark or conduct.
Okay, everyone, that's it of part 1 of chapter 7. We'll finish part 2 later when we wake up. Thank you. And then we'll do chapter 8 as well, which is the justice of reincarnation. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one. Bye-bye now.